dropping back in for the first time in a while. Thursday, September 4th, bleeding into the night of, or morning of the 5th. But I can't think of a better time to come back. Got the first 2 weeks of college football have already come and gone. Opening night of the NFL went down tonight. Not without headlines that will be talked about ad nauseum until tomorrow night's game. Got the first week of September, which to me always meant the first week of fall. The weather might not necessarily reflect that, though you see the opposite in the way of June weather during the start of summer, where it doesn't always want to cooperate. To me, September is the start of fall because it feels like everything that's synonymous with fall starts in September, but towards the beginning of it, not the end. So I've never been a big believer in the stereotypical 4 seasons starting when they actually start. I've always been a believer of summer is June, July, August. Fall is September, October, November, and so on and so forth. So start of fall, more or less. You heard it here first. And all things that come with it. Aside from that, a huge 24 hours, more or less, with shows and movie announcements. Excited for those. I know I saw Ed Gein finally getting a show on him. Not loosely based on him, not inspired by him, but an actual show on him. It looks really good. It's going to be a Netflix show. I always found it surprising that he got a show produced by a major production company after Jeffrey Dahmer. Just kind of felt like Jeffrey Dahmer was pretty surface level. Doesn't take a lot to get a background on him or to get firsthand accounts of him because of how numerous his interviews were and how extensive they were. Kind of feels like if you want to know about Jeffrey Dahmer, you do. Whereas Ed Gein would say made Jeffrey Dahmer look pretty mundane, and at one point I would say the dawn of the modern horror era was in more or less Alfred Hitchcock and Ed Gein inspired slashers, namely the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but you never saw one that really honed in on who he was and what he was like. And even the ones that were inspired by him didn't necessarily portray some of his doings with accuracy. And not that that was their goal necessarily, but is very loosely based, even the stuff that's based on him, where this is just a deep dive. It's all in. And I'm really curious about it because you can have heard of Ed Gein, you can do a little deep diving on him, but there's not a lot of firsthand accounts to go around. No major interviews, no 60-minute sit-downs the way Dahmer had, or Manson for that matter too. So this will be interesting to say the least, and I think even for as desensitized as the average person viewing it will be to some of the violence and grotesqueries in it, I think this will be even a step above what they're used to, and the fact that it really happened is the part that I think sets it apart from some of the stuff that some of the same viewers have become desensitized to. So I'm excited to see how that gets received and how that plays out, though the trailer that was released today looks really good. So shout out to Netflix for that one. The other big one was I Like Me. Amazon Prime set up a show or a deal with Ryan Reynolds to do a documentary on the late John Candy, and it is titled after his famous monologue from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which is an all-time classic of any genre, but I especially love that monologue. I think it's one of the best in cinema history, and it's one of the most relatable. It's weird. It almost breaks the fourth wall without the characters turning towards the camera. It grabs you that hard, which is really tough to do. When the characters are always looking towards each other or towards something off in the distance, they're never actually looking at you. It's hard to break that fourth wall without actually looking at the camera, but that's the way that one grips you. And the setup to it, too, is so perfect. Because I think a lot of people who've seen that movie, up until that point in the movie, see a lot of Neil Page, Steve Martin's character, in themselves. And they are right there with him, with his every reaction, every expression, everything he does and says. It resonates across the board. But then he goes off in a way that you could just feel it coming from almost the opening credits, that at some point this guy's just going to blow. And he eventually does. And it was very relatable to the average person viewing that, in the sense that a lot of times you have those days where everything goes sideways, to the point where if someone wasn't witnessing it themselves, they wouldn't believe half of what you're saying, and you almost can't help but blow up. And more often than not, it's on an undeserving party, at least to that extent. And when John Candy's character turns around and gives that monologue, I don't know, I've watched it 100 times and I still feel like that one says to me, and I hope it says to the masses, that no matter how you treat the people around you, it always makes you reconsider, like, could I be just even a little bit better to those around me? Because that one, I've never looked too deeply around the internet as to how it's received, but to me that's how I always took it, even though it probably gets lost by many just because it's delivered by John Candy, who you're so used to laughing at and so used to just everything is funny when he's on camera, and he's got this perm in the movie, and of course that in this day and age it's hard not to laugh at. But when he delivers that monologue, it just grabs you every time. And they released a trailer for that, and I'm excited for it because it's got a lot of people you knew he was close to and worked a lot with, but a lot of them haven't necessarily sat down and talked about their dealings with John Candy at length. And I know we're going to get some stories that probably haven't been heard by the masses from that documentary for the first time, so I'm excited to hear those. And both of those come out next month, so we don't have to wait too long for that. So that'll be really nice, even though it feels like right now there's a plethora of shows and movies to watch, no matter what genre you're into, that all look at the very least worth a shot. I know there's those two that look exciting. the new Noah Hawley series that is out right now, Alien Earth. I haven't gotten a chance to dive into that yet, but that looks really good. Huge Noah Hawley fan. He apparently wrote it during his filming of one of the seasons of Fargo, and you'll notice if you watched Fargo, there are quite a few overlapping actors between the two. I believe it was season 3 or 4, I want to say, when he was writing that. So I'm excited to give that a shot because his Fargo show has been incredible. Been a fan of all 5 seasons, and I'm excited to see him branch out into a new genre. As for movies, I finally got around to seeing Weapons. I was so ready to see that one. It didn't disappoint. It's a little surprising in a lot of ways, but it did not disappoint. Very unique from, I would say, just about any other movie I've ever seen, and that always scores points with me. I didn't know what to expect necessarily going in. I was pretty determined to go in blind to that one, which that's always been my preference, but it was entertaining. It gets labeled as a horror, though I'm not sure. There are parts of it that would definitely lean towards that, but above that, I would say it was an experience to watch. Again, not many shows or movies resemble it. You can't really watch it and think, oh, this immediately reminds me of fill in the blank. So that alone is always a bonus. And then you pair that with, there are some familiar faces no matter what kind of movies you're into. You're gonna see someone you know in that cast, and all of them were great. Some of them played more stereotypical roles for themselves than others, but all of them were awesome in each of their roles. So I would recommend it overall. I think even those not into horror movies would still enjoy it. At the very least, they would not be bored. I promise. That one, you're not bored during. It's an experience. That's the best way I can describe it. Which, to me, I'll take that every single time. Just because when you watch a lot of movies, especially of the same genre or done by the same people, whatever it might be, some of them kind of run together. Some of them start to remind you of, 7 or 8 different movies or shows that pop into your mind right away when you're watching them. But this one, it's a one of one. And for that alone, I think it makes it worth the watch. Then you had the NFL kicking off tonight. Made it a whole one play before somebody got ejected. That was unique. And upon further review, too, it was very much instigated, despite the fact that initial footage suggested it was a random act of spitting. Turns out it was just a back and forth spitting match between Dak Prescott and Jalen Carter. Carter was ejected, and unfortunately for him, because this happened on a Thursday night, I think the NFL is going to come down much, much harder on this, being that the whole world just saw that than they would if this was just a random Sunday afternoon game. Then we had a rare lightning delay of about an hour, so that was unique. Ended up being a great game compared to, I think, what most people expected. I think most people expected Dallas to get run out of the building, but they were very much in it the whole way. They had the ball with under 3 minutes left and a chance to win it. They couldn't do that, but nonetheless, kept you entertained and made it worth sticking around after the rain delay. And tomorrow night, or tonight, I guess, the Chargers and Chiefs play in Rio. Odd move for the NFL, I gotta be honest, because despite the fact that the Chargers are one of the teams who share a stadium, it was a rare chance for a sellout in LA, and they passed that up. The Chargers could have opened up on a Friday night, and there would have been enough time to convert SoFi by Sunday for the Rams game, and yet the NFL passed on that and gave up what looks to be one of the premier matchups of the year, one of the two times these two teams meet, to an international market, which, if you go by attendance, in terms of the international games, it does not matter what matchup you throw out there, they're going to show up. Unlike in the U.S., where teams either got to be good or the market really has to be all in on them, or there just won't be a sellout. It just doesn't happen that way. And Chargers Chiefs, they could have played that anywhere, but LA specifically has struggled to sell out games between anybody that doesn't involve the Raiders, the Steelers, the Packers, the Cowboys, the usual suspects in the way of bringing in people by the thousands. And that's no doubt why the Rams are opening up against the Texans. Obviously, the NFL schedule is on a rotation, and the teams and where the game will be played is determined years in advance in most cases. Outside of 3 different games is all out of the 17 that each team plays. But no doubt the NFL purposely scheduled the worst draw, or one of the worst draws in the league, week 1, knowing people are just going to show up because it's week 1. They don't care who's on the field. Whereas you get into week 7, 8, 10, 11, 13, 14, especially in LA, the team's got to be doing really well, or it's just not going to sell out. And the Chiefs are one of the few exceptions where I think you could sell out, especially that matchup being a rivalry. You totally could have done that and sold out, and the NFL passed, which to me is amazing because there are very few guaranteed sellouts. And those two teams have to play each other in each venue every year, and the NFL passed entirely on the one that they were going to struggle with selling tickets for. But I guess in that sense too, money talks, and the TV deals supersede anything going on inside the stadiums. But nonetheless, it should be a great game. The venue looks a little odd. Amazingly, it looks a lot like the soccer venue the Chargers were playing in circa 2017 before this stadium was finished. So that would probably be the closest parallel I could draw to it. But definitely nothing like SoFi and nothing like Arrowhead. So it's going to feel a little weird to watch this one. That being said, you've got football and baseball all weekend. Football Thursday to Monday. Every day there's at least one game. Every day other than Monday. And tomorrow there are many games. You got some of the best weather of the year coming up, if not already happening in most markets. And you've got TV shows and movies galore. So what are you excited for?